Hello, my friends. It's Victor speaking. And today we are here to speak about Saturn stationing retrograde, which is going to be happening on the 23rd of May. And then Saturn will be actually retrograde for about 5 months. However, the video I'm making is definitely going to be relevant till about the 15th of January 2022. And one of the reasons why is because on the 23rd of May, Saturn will station retrograde. And then we're always going to have to look at where Saturn, what degree Saturn goes retrograde on, and what degree Saturn gets back on that onto that degree as well, where it started moving backwards. And that's going to be happening on the 15th of January 2022. And this is kind of like a culmination of the Saturn cycle. So today, what we're going to be doing in this little webinar, we're going to be going through what Saturn might indicate in your chart. Secondly, I want to be looking at what type of aspect Saturn is going to be making to the Sun. And one of the reasons why, because the retrograde motion is very much about how far away this planet is from the Sun, or how close the Sun is to any of the planets. So somehow, kind of like the Sun is always illuminating somehow the other planet's energy, or even combining that. It really depends. So in this video, you will be learning about what Sun trines Saturn, what Sun sesqui quadrates Saturn, what Sun quincunx Saturn, what Sun opposing Saturn means, because these are the type of aspects the Saturn and the Sun will make while he is in retrograde period. So that's quite exciting. Now, if you don't know what a retrograde planet means, first of all, I made a video about my intake on retrograde planets. I kind of recommend that checking out, because it is more than just revisiting things and so forth. It has got plenty of other meanings. And in that video, I've also spoken about what it means when you have got a planet retrograde in your natal chart as well. So, but let's get started. So the retrograde cycle are very much connected to your relationship to the Sun. So, and it's true for every single retrograde cycles. So what happens is that the Earth kind of revolves around the Sun, and so the Earth has got this circular orbit around the Sun, and around the rest of the planets in the solar system as well. So the Earth kind of takes a year to revolve around the Sun, but the other planets are moving in a different speed. So, and they are either closer or further away from the Sun when we look at it from the Earth perspective. So what happens is that when there is a planet seems to be in a retrograde period, it just looks like it's moving backwards, but it's not entirely sure. It's not entirely true. It just seems to be that it's slowing down and then eventually turning backwards from the Earth perspective, how we can see that. So first of all, let's just have a look at what actually Saturn indicates in our chart. So Saturn indicates where and how we feel restricted, and whether we are aware of our limitations or boundaries. Saturn also shows in your chart where your doubts or lack of confidence lie within yourself. What area of life we fear failure? What area of life we need to face a reality? What area of life we experience delays and frustrations? Because Saturn, I tend to call it as like a taskmaster. So it always gives you tasks. In ancient astrology, it's actually associated with talent, because if you put time, money, and effort into something, no way that you would not achieve. But Saturn brings these gifts to you very slowly. It only gives it to you when it thinks you deserve it. So Saturn is pretty much your biggest life lesson ever. Something to do with your karmic duties, karmic debts, karmic responsibilities. And it acts like a moral compass. So wherever Saturn is transiting your chart at the moment, that's the area of life where you should not be cutting corners or try to cheat. That's the area of life where you should be focusing the most. Now, towards the end of the video, I'm also going to be talking about each of the rising sign briefly, what this Saturn retrograde period might ask you and what area of life you're going to have to contemplate a little bit. But with Saturn, it's very much about a long apprenticeship program. And then eventually, once we learned it, we become a master, and then we can actually share that with others, because Saturn is kind of like the professor in the chart. So the professor, in a sense, that remember that what a professor or a teacher does in the class, right? They teach you something. You might be very reluctant about that subject, what they try to push down on your throat. And then eventually they're going to test you, right? And they're going to give you a mark, how much you've managed to kind of learn about that subject. And this is exactly what Saturn does to you as well. It kind of gives you a task to resolve, and then after you get grades for it from Saturn. And then if you didn't learn about the area of life whatsoever, then of course, what the Saturn retrograde period indicates, you're going to have to retake an exam. And then you've got 3 opportunities to do that. And then if you don't learn about it, then unfortunately, that area of life somehow becomes miserable for you. So it's all about becoming responsible, self-contained, a little bit of a growing up to do, and becoming wiser in regards to that topic, whatever the Saturn house position is for you in the sky by transits. So Saturn will go retrograde on the 23rd of May. It's going to be lasting till October the 11th. It is happening in the sign of Aquarius. And whenever Saturn goes retrograde, we kind of need to kind of consolidate the basis of our life, and maybe making some type of readjustment of our social functioning as well. So Saturn is a social planet, so it typically talks about what is going on in the world and how does that affect me. Maybe with this Saturn, Saturn retrograde, we tend to be questioning our way of living, working, and loving, very much dependent on, of course, where Saturn is happening in your chart. But it's always about how you experience these planetary movements. So especially take a note of that Saturn in your chart, if it's going to be making an aspect and it's going to be somehow triggering one of your planets 3 times. And typically I would be looking at conjunctions, oppositions, and squares mainly. Of course, trine and sextile might be also working, but the opposition, squares, and conjunctions tends to bring events for us rather than the sextiles and the trines. So Saturn will be going retrograde on 13 degrees of Aquarius. Usually he goes backwards about 6 degrees. So this time around, Saturn will go back to about 6 degrees. So if you have got any planet between 13 to 6 degrees, somewhere in Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, or Scorpio, you are going to be very affected by this movement. So it is very much about, as I said, a chance to retake an exam and basically obtain a better grade and mark in life. Saturn also talks about cold weather, but when Saturn actually goes retrograde, the weather might get warmer. Now, let me explain to you why. Saturn is all about slowliness. So imagine that Saturn has got this 0.02 degree average speed. So imagine when Saturn is going actually faster, it is against its own nature. So Saturn retrograde is the one which is more positive actually than negative, in my opinion, because it slows down and then it just tells you that, okay, I don't like going fast. So what's the point in going fast when my nature is all about slowly but surely? So I kind of tend to describe Saturn retrograde is like when you are driving, for instance, in a canal, and then it's completely dark there, and then you slow down because you don't want to cause any type of accident. So it talks about a little bit of a cautiousness, and it kind of tells you that we're going to have to re-exam some of the projects we might want to be investing time, money, and effort into, and having a look at a closer look. I would like to remind you that Saturn retrograde does not talk about not signing any contract and all those type of crap, basically, because Saturn goes retrograde for a good 5 months. So life is not going to stop. You can do anything you want to during a Saturn period. But I would say that is just very important that you want to be taking a little bit of a more slow or cautious approach. So Saturn governs the elements of time for us, and it's like a building planet. So yes, maybe let's say if you are building a property at the moment, things might slow down and there is going to be a kind of a delay. But usually it is very much about a better result as well by the end of it. So Saturn rules over studies, agriculture, construction work. But yes, it's definitely about learning about our limitations as well. So when Saturn goes retrograde, it kind of encourages us to sometimes be alone as well, or having some alone time, especially if Saturn will be going through your 12th house or 4th house, even your 8th house as well, or maybe just understanding other people's motives. Why is that? Because Saturn is a social planet. It's not a personal planet. So usually it talks about things which is happening outside of the world, maybe with other people as well. And then how does that affect my life? So for instance, you want to be building that home, and then all of a sudden the constructing company says that, sorry, our machines are not working. We're going to be delaying your project with 2 weeks. So you had an outside circumstance which is affecting yourself. So Saturn in Aquarius, of course, Aquarius is all about the collective energy. It's all about the friends, the people we are surrounded by. So we might become a little bit more distrustful in our relationships with others. And it can happen to the point where we might feel that people are judging us, or people are just kind of like putting us under a magnifying glass. So with this Saturn, we kind of need to learn how to respect other people's wisdom and opinion as well. And basically not getting involved, letting them to mature in their own time. So a little bit harder with Saturn retrograde to stick to our plans. So it might be kind of throwing up your schedule. You might want to do something on the 15th and it's only going to be happening on the 18th as well. So I would recommend it's not necessarily throwing yourself into anything without thinking through the consequences. And probably you might want to be kind of because Saturn is the planet of concentration. So it wants you to look at the foundation. You can't really build a home if the foundations are quite rocky and, you know, a little bit loopy as well. So during a Saturn retrograde period, yeah, we say that you shouldn't be starting any construction projects. Maybe we just need to be looking at the plans a little bit more. But definitely it is asking you to revisit some of the tasks you have posed, and taking some time, finding some time to actually, okay, how can I get that project go forward? So it's not necessarily coming up with new projects, but revisiting old ones. And then how can I take an advantage of that project now? So, and also it might be telling you that how I can structure my time a little bit more as well. So Saturn is all about structure, and usually it does things in a strict ways. It's all about kind of overcoming any hurdles and obstacles, but without any type of frustration. So looking at it, okay, how can I be the most effective? Saturn is a long-term project. So it's brilliant to, you know, to work on those projects you've already started, because this can bring you already some kind of success in a sense after, I would say, January, February time. So yes, Saturn is the planet of Hermit. So especially, as I said, in the 4th or the 12th house, if it goes through those for you, then you might withdraw yourself a little bit, and you might become a little bit more supportive towards us as well. Or this might be the time for you to be more honest and patient, and following a kind of deep introspection, especially if Saturn is going through your communicational houses, which is the 3rd, the 7th, and the 11th. Or it's of course triggering one of the rulers of those houses as well. Then it might be talking about just being more patient with people, or being more honest with them as well. So when Saturn changes direction, I feel like it's just all about how we can reflect on how well you kind of embodying the Saturnian qualities and the Saturnian ruled areas. So for instance, me having my Pisces rising sign, Saturn ruling my 11th and the 12th house, I need to contemplate on my spiritual long-term goals. 12th house is spirituality, and the 11th house is all about long-term goals, hopes, and wishes. So how can I alter those ideas which I already came up with, for instance, in the past? So one of the ideas I'm having is that I'm integrating all my courses into my website, so I don't always need to email them, and then you're going to be able to track your progress and so forth. Hopefully it's going to be done in the next couple of months. Well, I'm already working on it with my IT guys, so maybe it's already done in a month time. So, but, you know, I came up with this idea a couple of months ago. We haven't really done anything about it. So I kind of revisit that topic for myself already. And, you know, also, are you making a good use of your own time? So especially if Saturn is ruling your 6th house and the 7th house, am I focusing way too much on work, right, which is Saturn? Or actually, do I find some time for pleasure, fun, and enjoying my time together with my partner as well? So planning work, and, you know, there is always a difference between planning the work or working the plan, right? So which one are you doing? A significant change. Also, Saturn could be talking about the fact that have you become any wiser about that area of life wherever Saturn is going through, especially if you are already an elderly person. So it might be talking about the fact that, yeah, am I ready to kind of give knowledge for instance, to others about something, especially if Saturn is going through your third and the ninth house or those rulers. Saturn also represents hierarchy, authority figures in your life. So are you trying to actually break away from what the government wants from us or the authority? And that's very possible with Saturn being in Aquarius, because that's a little bit of a rebellion energy. Now, if Saturn is going through your 8th house, for instance, I might recommend just making sure that you follow the rules, because 8th house talks about police and fines and, you know, like the ticket collectors, traveling on the bus, and, you know, all of a sudden a ticket collector is giving you a fine. For instance, I had this incident because already Saturn is in its shadow period last week. Well, I don't speak Bulgarian, but I went on the bus and then I saw the contactless sign. And then I tapped my bank card. That's how I wanted to pay for my ticket. Being Saturnian, so I'm responsible in that sense. I'm not like a dodgerer. And a ticket collector came, and then I handed over my bank card, and then he couldn't read it. So he said to me, okay, you need to pay a fine. And I was like, I'm not paying a fine because I've already paid for the ticket. And then, well, I don't care. And so we had a little bit, and then he wanted to call the police and all those type of things. And I said, you can call the police, but I'm getting off the bus now. I paid for the ticket. And I showed him the sticker on the bus that it says that you can pay by card. And then it was given kind of an instruction on that. So anyway, so, you know, that's the type of Saturnian authority figure energy. So people are somehow coming into your life to show you a mirror, how important it is to somehow follow rules. And Saturn in Aquarius very much talk about the collective rules. However, there is also a Uranian square coming to that Saturn. So, of course, Uranus still wants to kind of throw up any of the rules. And Uranus is very strong at the moment, of course, because he is direct and it's ruling over Saturn as well. So another keyword to Saturn, which I've already touched based on, and that's the structure. So Saturn going retrograde is very much inviting you to reflect on the structures in your life. And it might be physical, it might be home environment, it might be your possessions. It really depends on the position of that. Possessions is something to do with the 2nd house, home environment is the 4th, or even the physicality part is in the 6th house. Now, I feel like overall, this Saturnian period or retrograde period is very much about comparing where you are now, a little bit contemplating on where you are now and where you want to be in the long run, and what type of steps I'm going to be taking to get there. So there is an element of a expansion involved with that Saturnian flavor. And of course, the most important transit what Saturn is going to be making is to Uranus. But of course, we've spoken about that Uranus and Saturnian energy already, so I'm not necessarily going to go into that strongly, but from a world perspective, Saturn, as the representation of the government, going retrograde indicates to me that they are going to be revisiting some of their decisions, some of their projects in the last probably, well, basically since 2020, December onwards. And of course, Saturn also is sextiling Chiron. And that's another very important aspect of 2021. But I've also spoken about that aspect in another video. And I would like to mention that Saturn is also forming a grand trine with the Gemini Venus and the Libra Moon as well on the day when Saturn goes retrograde. So it's all about how I can bring some type of harmony, ease, and stability into my life. Now, as I said, the retrograde periods are very much about the the connection to the sun. So when the Saturnian retrograde period happens, as I said, you might feel that somehow time stops a little bit, and you want to be looking at any planet within 1 to 2 degree around that 13 degree of Aquarius. So the fixed signs especially, or even if you have got your angles around those degrees and Saturn is aspecting that. So imagine that you've got, for instance, a Sagittarius rising sign on between 6 to 13 degree, and Saturn meaning that it's transiting your third house. Of course, it's going to be affecting you as well. So what happens between the sun and the sun and any other retrograde planet is that somehow it gets sealed off. So it kind of like preventing it to somehow getting contaminated by any type of external influences. So so altogether, this retrograde period is going to be lasting for 9 months. So on the 23rd, so the sun is going to go stationary retrograde. And then the very first aspect it's going to be making is a sun trine Saturn, which is going to be happening. Let me just be sure about that. It's on the 3rd of June. So because the sun on the day of the retrograde period is around 2 degrees of Gemini. So you might not be noticing anything what is going on around the 23rd, and then you're going to tell me, Victor, I haven't really felt anything. So maybe this Saturn retrograde is not really triggering me whatsoever. Maybe that sun is going to be spotlighting something around the 2nd of June for you. So you might want to be having a closer look either around the 23rd, between the 23rd and I would say the 2nd of June or up till the 7th of June. If something happens, something which is slowing you down a little bit. Of course, there is a trine happening there. So it is somehow giving you an opportunity to work on something or towards something. There is an element of a creative force coming together with the sun. But if you are having some type of project, you're going to have to be very patient about it. Now, the next aspect, Sun is going to be making to Saturn. That's going to be a Sun sesquiquadrate to Saturn, which is happening on 19th of June. Now, if you don't know anything about sesquisquadrate, basically that's 135 degree, which is of course made up with a square 90 degree and the semi-square, which is a 45 degree. Now, sesquisquadrate for me is a aspect which we have been trying to do for plenty of time or plenty of lifetimes, and then we haven't been able to do that. So the sun will be bringing you some type of very old project back into your life, which you need to somehow focus on and maybe start working on that. It's not an immediate project what you started thinking about, let's say, last week. It might be something which happened somewhere in 2020, beginning of the year, 2020, beginning of the year, when Saturn really got activated by Pluto and Jupiter as well at the same time. However, sesquiquadrate, because it has got that very double-edged Marsian flavor to it, it could bring some type of tension and argument as well. And I would like to remind you that whatever issues you might be having around this period of time, it's not going to go away easily because it's deeply rooted somewhere in the past. So, you know, sun always wants to illuminate something in your chart. You might want to be looking at where the sun is. So, for instance, in my chart, sun is going through the 4th house at the moment. So this, and the sun is in my 12th house. natally, and Saturn is going through my 12th house as well natally. So maybe I'm going to have to illuminate some area of life around home matters. Maybe something will break down, which I'm going to need to attend, and therefore there is going to be some type of expenditure. 12th house is all about expenditure. Or maybe I just need to be more mindful about paying the bills. And the reason being is because my 4th house ruler is in the 11th, which is 8 sign away from the 4th. So paying the bills is going to be extremely important. Now, so wherever the sun is, it wants to illuminate something. And with the Saturn, we're going to have to revisit an area of life. Then followed by, which is going to be happening on the 3rd of July, Sun is going to be having a quincunx to Saturn retrograde. So the quincunx is an aspect which is a 150-degree energy, and it talks about redirecting, readjusting some of our kind of focus, basically. So the Sun house position will show you or highlight the area of life where you're gonna have to revisit some of the topics, where you're gonna have to somehow make adjustments. So for instance, again, looking at my own example, with the Sun in the 4th house, maybe I'm gonna have to readjust my plans about where I want to live or where I not want to live, or do I feel secure around my home environment or not. The quincunx has got this Virgo and Scorpionic flavor to it. So Virgo is all about sorting things out and then basically assimilating, and the Scorpio element is all about elimination, but also somehow regaining control. So this aspect could be really talking about what area of life I need to regain control, or what area of life I need to reorganize my priorities. There is also an element of fated aspect with this in conjunction as well. So something could be happening which is very fated for you. Of course, look at if the Sun is triggering any planets on that day, as well as your Saturn. Let's say, for instance, Saturn is triggering your, let's say, Sun, which is ruling your 6th house, then maybe you're going to have to look at anything around your medical conditions. And that's going to be the most important element of that. Now, for instance, Saturn is sextiling my natal Jupiter, which is very much about my work and career. So with that quincunx, I need to be making some type of career adjustments, or maybe I need to gain some type of control, or I need to reorganize my priorities. Then the next aspect which Saturn is going to be making to the Sun is going to be 2nd of August, and Sun will be having an opposition to retrograde Saturn. Now, Saturn is actually, when it's opposing the Sun, that's going to be the fastest moment of the retrograde. So it's kind of going really fast backwards. And, as I said, this is a challenge because Saturn doesn't like being fast because it's against its own nature. So somehow 2 area of life is going to be having kind of a rampage going on. So you might want to be having a look at where this opposition is falling in your natal chart, and that's where you might need to introduce some type of new structures. Opposition means that I have to balance out those 2 areas of life, and sometimes we might feel in a prison in one of them, and then I want to be breaking out of the other. So in that case, the Sun, let's just have a look at what degree the Sun will be on. So Sun will be around 8 degrees of Leo. So with this, you might want to be looking at where the Leo house cusp is in your chart. So in my case, it's going to be triggering my 6th and the 8th house. So I really need to be putting a break onto what I eat or how much exercise I do. I need to be having, I'm going to have a balance going out in that department. So of course, the Sun is a little bit of a faster planet, and Saturn might be an indication that you're going to have to revisit at least 4 to 5 signs, right? But it is only important to you if it's really triggering one of your natal planets, as well as I said, at the moment of the retrograde period, so between the 6th and the 13th degree. And then you're going to have to kind of merge that planet with the houses, whatever the Sun goes through. But with that opposition, we definitely need to be working on our self-confidence as well. And we're going to have to work on our core vitality and on our long-term goals. So with this opposition, there is always an element of a shaking up, maybe working on our fears and defenses as well. And it might be time to somehow restructure certain elements in our life. So these are the major aspects. Now we are back to when the Sun is going to be, again, having a quincunx to Saturn. And that's going to be happening on the 31st of August. It's very similar to what I said previously. Definitely whatever that quincunx brought you, and that might have been happened in Cancerian department in your chart. You need to be revisiting that topic again around the August 31st, beginning of September. Then on 15th of September, Sun is going to be again in Sesqui square with your Saturn. And lastly, 29th of September, Sun is going to be trining your Saturn. So some of your Saturnian issues might start actually easing up towards the end of the Saturn trine period. So, you know, the Saturn trine is again at its lowest in the retrograde cycle. So, and then meaning that it's against kind of in its own element. It likes being that long, but the days can seem to be very long. And as I said, it's like going in a tunnel. So you might want to be moving faster because your Sun might feel that, you know, oh, something is holding me back again. So around that period of time, we're going to have to kind of focus on patience. And you might want to be having a look at where the Sun is in your chart in that moment. So, and eventually Saturn in October will turn station direct, meaning that from the our viewpoint on Earth, Saturn will start moving forward again. So our internal focus can have a significant change, and it's like getting out of that tunnel, or it's a little bit of a misty type of feeling as well, and maybe opportunities will present themselves again. And as I said, beginning of January, that's when Saturn will reach again that point in the chart where it was originally. So that's when really things are starting to move ahead. So it's kind of like finally what you might have started in 2020 January, or even 2021, somewhere from, I would say, February onwards, maybe you're going to start seeing the results in 2022, somewhere early January. Well, I'm really hoping it's not going to take like 8 months to get my course integration into my program. But yeah, I'm really hoping it's not going to happen. Great. So I hope this video helps for you. Maybe we want to be looking at very briefly what this aspect might be bringing you on a personal level. So if you have got an Aries rising sign, you know, Aries is quite fiery, right? And it's quite impatient and it wants to go ahead, and it's a go-getter. So Saturn really wants you to be patient. And let's not forget that also your Aries rising sign puts Saturn into detriment as well, which kind of indicate that maybe the Saturn really wants to control you. It wants to kind of put an order into your life, and you can really become kind of frustrated about it. Maybe your rising sign wants to take some risks. Saturn tells you, okay, go ahead, but it must be a calculated risk. So don't go against the wall, banging your head in the wall. It's not about a spontaneous decision. It needs to have a structure before you move forward with any of your projects. But it also tells you at the same time, because I like the Saturn Aries or Saturn Mars type of aspect, because it kind of indicates that you are a long distance runner. So it gives you kind of that perseverance, that endurance not to give up on things. So it gets you to get to the end of the tunnel because you kind of see the light there. Now, with your Aries rising sign, it means that Saturn will be transiting in your 11th house. So it really talks about somehow, especially in the August period, when the adjustment period starts, it tells you that you're going to have to readjust your long-term goals as well. And this is one of the reasons why you don't need to rush into anything at the moment. It might be bringing some type of delays also, something to do with your extended family. 11th house for me is your extended family, in a sense that people we can be grateful for having some type of success in our life. So your followers, your social media channels, and so forth. So Saturn might be telling you that it's time to even confront them, or even to comfort them in a sense. So am I grateful to those people who are part of my journey in a sense? But also things might not be working out the way you have hoped for. Now, if you have got and of course, for Aries, it doesn't only rule your 11th house, but it rules your 10th as well. So something in your career can also bring challenges, or not necessarily challenges, but delays. Now, if you have got a Taurus rising sign, Taurus is a very slow sign, right? So actually, a Saturn retrograde period shouldn't necessarily be such an issue. Especially because Saturn might also sextile your rising sign also. So this Saturn retrograde period can be quite positive for your career motivation. Maybe that Saturn actually tells you that it's time to take the center stage somehow, or maybe just to chip away from some of the professional goals I have, and maybe going back to the foundation. Let's just build one project in one go rather than trying to focus on plenty. Of course, delays you might be also experiencing as well, even though Taurus is a very slow sign, but Saturn can be slowing down way too much. And remember, that's going to be somewhere in June, July. And then when Saturn is going to be a little bit faster, that's going to be again when Saturn and the Sun will be opposition. So you might see that things are going to start getting faster somewhere around the end of August, beginning of September. Watch out for your financials. Maybe what happens is that some of the international business money is just not coming in as quickly as you want to. Or you might order something online as well, and the shipping is just delayed. Remember that Saturn is something to do with your 10th and the 9th house. Maybe it's a little bit harder to accomplish things this time around, but probably you will see a significant improvement somewhere beginning of next year. Now, if you have got and also Taurus, remember that Uranus is also triggering your first house as well. So you're going to have to sometimes listen to Uranus and sometimes not listen to that Uranus, because Uranus wants to speed things up. So you can easily make a mistake. And that could be eventually bringing you further delays in life. So, and all those are around your career. Now, if you have got a Gemini rising sign, this retrograde period could be actually quite a karmic one for you. Just a second. So Gemini rising people, sorry about that, just someone was ringing the bell. So Gemini rising people, it might be something, well, the retrograde period is going to be happening in your 9th house, but that Saturn also rules your 8th house as well. So some of you will get somehow, might be experiencing some type of karmic type of events, because it does rule over a very spiritual and philosophical type of house, right? The 9th is something to do with the divine energy, something around spirituality, something around your belief system. So it might be telling you that it's time to trust the universe a little bit, or you might want to be just making sure that somehow your belief system is changing. It might bring actually events where you're going to have to change your travel plans, for instance, but more because maybe some type of governmental rules and so forth. But it also can tell you that it's time to study something. It might be telling you that don't throw yourself into anything hectic. You might need to learn to pace yourself a little bit. And maybe you want to be thinking a little bit more positively, because within that period of time, you can get a little bit overwhelmed as well. And then if you approach things a little bit slower, then it might have got a very great payout for you. So of course, you're going to be having Uranus somewhere in the 12th house. So it's, in my opinion, it's very much about some spiritual elevation for you. It might be a time when you can really revisit some of your spiritual karmic lessons for yourself. And maybe it is also telling you that it's time to kind of doing some type of good deeds for others as well. It kind of like surrendering 12th house to spiritual matters, which is the 9th house. Maybe it's all about giving up on a travel for a better time, for instance, next year, which is going to be happening in January, February time for you. Okay, when you have got a Cancer rising sign, meaning that you are going to be having a 8th and the 7th house activation with this Saturn transit, and also, of course, Uranus is going to be triggering your 11th house. So it might be talking about the fact that we're going to have to trust our abilities a lot more. Maybe it brings some type of financial issues as well with your partner's money. Maybe they're going to have to adjust somehow their long-term goals, finding a new job, finding new ways of being able to pay the bills. But it would also talk about the fact that it's time for you to somehow readjust some of your long-term goals as well as a couple, and then how we're going to pace ourselves out when it comes to attending our duties. So it could also indicate that because the 8th house is very much about the 11th house is very much about gains, and the 8th house at the same time is all about some of the expenditures we're going to have to pay out, such as the mortgage, the bills, something to do with those ticket collectors and all those type of things. So you might be expecting a bigger amount of a gain, and then you're going to be having a little bit of a setback in that department. Also, Well, a little bit of a harder topic to mention there, but it could also trigger your father's health situation as well, which you might need to be very careful about. But I also believe that because it rules your seventh house, it might be just revisiting some of your relationship topics. Your relationship topics, in a sense that, do we spend enough quality time together? Can we actually have those quality conversations with each other? Can we actually hang out with our friends? And are we going out with others, or are we somehow socializing together as a couple? So we're going to have to make some readjustments there, especially when Sun is going to be hitting your rising sign, which is, of course, going to be happening towards the end of June, beginning of July. Great. Now, taking it further, a Leo rising sign, it's gonna probably, one of the things which might bring you for you the most is some type of tests in the relationship. So it's very much about again revisiting some of the foundations of the relationship. So the question here is, are you a little bit bickery, or are we arguing with our... Sorry, my doggy is too excited, and he wants to talk to you guys as well. So that's why she's barking. So yeah, so it might be about readjusting some bits and bobs in your relationship. But I also would like to mention that maybe a very old romantic partner of yours pop up in your life as well. That's also very, very possible. I feel like with this activation, it's very much about my needs versus my partner's needs. So am I getting enough attention from my partner? Do I give enough attention to my partner? And we can have some type of some type of confronting moments in there. So that Saturn wants you to revisit the basics, remembering why we got together at the first place. For you, also Saturn rules the sixth house as well. So maybe your partner's health situation needs to be revisited, as well as yours. It might be just about the fact that we're gonna have to revisit our lifestyle, and maybe scheduling those sometimes fun moments as well. If you have got Virgo rising sign, this time around, you're gonna have to listen to your body. You're gonna have to pay attention to your health. These are going to be the most important part, especially if you feel burned out at your work. Maybe this is the time when you want to be scheduling a little bit of a time off for yourself, especially when Sun is going to be hitting the sign of Virgo. It might be telling you that it's time to take a holiday, to retreat yourself a little bit, to kind of going in a cave really, and then contemplating on your life. Is it the work I want to be doing, or is it something I can't really do anymore because I feel burned out? The universe might want to kind of give you a little bit of a time to have a different type of focus in your life as well. So it might be about focusing on your diet, making sure that we eat healthy, or we don't go overboard with it. So that's another thing which Saturn might want to tell you. It just tells you that you need a little bit of a TLC, really. A tender, loving care for your body, for your condition to be in a good shape. It might just want to actually stabilize some of your medical conditions as well. Now, especially if you have got returning issues, this Saturn can bring, unfortunately, some returning medical conditions also. So you might want to keep an eye on that. If you have got a Libra rising sign, then the creative element of your life is going to be emphasized the most with this Saturn retrograde. So maybe it's all about get in touch with your muse anymore, because you might feel that somehow they kind of left me and then I'm not that inspired at the moment. Or maybe actually you are experiencing a little bit of a harder time to express your creativity. Maybe just those creative projects, what you want to be pursuing, are not necessarily working out the greatest. Maybe actually you are just not feeling too motivated somehow to create something new. And you're going to have to go back to the basics and revisit yourself what you love about this project the most. Also, it can indicate to you as well that maybe some of the old flames are going to be coming back into your life. And then you're going to be scratching your head what to do this time around. Maybe actually it's telling you that you're going to have to look at what ways I take fun. Am I going overboard with those? Or actually, am I just not having enough fun in my life? And another possibility is something around the baby project. So am I actually disciplined enough in my diet to get pregnant? Or are we actually creative enough when it comes to our sexuality with my partner? So when you have got a Scorpio rising sign, well, of course, there is a double-edged sword here, because Uranus is opposing you, and at the same time now Saturn is going retrograde as well, which is happening somewhere around your fourth house. So it might be just telling you that it's time to dig deeper and then look at some of the internal foundations of yourself, looking at the roots, where I come from, what type of issues might be I need to kind of eliminate in a sense. And it might be your partner who is somehow showing you a mirror, or it might be actually that you lash out on your partner and you're going to have to look into the mirror, seeing where these insecurities are coming from and why I am a little bit more impatient with my loved ones. It could bring some tension within your family and your home environment as well, especially, well, I would say family. You know, there is always this forever debate whether the fourth house rules the mom or the dad. It could really be both of them. That Saturn also could be talking about how am I going to balance out my professional life with my home environment. Because the Scorpio rising sign is very much about craving for power. And Saturn at the moment is also opposing your midheaven, especially if it's between 6 to 13 degree. So it could talk about some type of repressed anger issues as well towards our children, towards our family overall, which need a little bit of an attendance from your point of view. So it's very much about releasing some trauma and maybe some maternal issues. It might be just talking about the fact that you are getting frustrated of not being able to get pregnant, and you're going to have to approach it from a psychological perspective, why I am not able to. If you have got Sagittarius rising sign, then Saturn is actually triggering your third house. And then, of course, it rules your fourth as well. So it might be telling you that it's time to have an honest, open conversation with your family about something, or you might just want to be moving out. And you don't want to be ending up, for instance, getting into gossips, and your parents will get to know from others that you are planning to move out and you are on the lookout for a new property. So you might remember, with Saturn retrograde, we don't cut corners. So yeah, but we might get involved in some type of gossips and rumors as well. So you might want to be watching out what you say, because it could lead to some type of miscommunication as well. And remembering that words can cause some type of damage to others as well. So maybe that Saturn is telling you that we're going to have to be less opinionated, and we're going to have to be a little bit more kind towards others as well. Maybe definitely Saturn might be telling you to revisit some of your bigger ideas, what you had in the past, and then maybe it's time to actually work on that and implementing those. Maybe Saturn telling you that it's time to look at whether you are way too optimistic, or maybe way too kind, or maybe way too giving. Because it might tell you that you need to slow down a little bit on that department as well, because this Saturn might bring you some type of frustration because you want immediate result of something. If you have got a Capricorn rising sign, well, then it's going to be affecting specifically your money. And Capricorn is usually quite responsible when it comes to money. But this time around, Saturn wants you to be even wiser. So watch out for your investments. Watch out how you spend your money. You can become very stingy about it, but you can also do that in a Uranian way. And you want to be spending way too much money on fun. So try to kind of avoid any type of splurging right now, because that could even bring you some unexpected expenses, which you might not be able to attend. So this is a period of time when you have to reevaluate your investments. Are they working? Am I doing the right investments? Maybe looking at your personal account and doing some type of structure, where my money goes, what am I spending that on, and so forth. It's like Saturn is always talking about taking an inventory. So it is very much about taking an inventory in your financial department, looking at ways how I can save money. Because the last 1 year could have been slightly bit challenging in the money department anyway. So, and then also it talks to you about maybe looking at the prices you offer to your clients as well. Do my prices reflect somehow my self-worth? And it's not necessarily just because I want to be increasing my paycheck, but because I don't want to look cheap to others as well. Saturn rules over cheapness. So maybe it's about revisiting whether my business profile is way too cheap. When you have got Aquarius rising sign, well, you're definitely going to be affected by this Saturn retrograde period, because it's happening in your own sign as well. And it might want you to spend or have a little bit more personal time. So you might be given some type of kind of like harsh lessons to kind of learn from them and then make necessary changes in your life. Whenever the first house gets activated, it always talks about changes in my environment. Usually these are quite big ones. Maybe it's about me losing weight, maybe revisiting some of my medical conditions, because the first house rules the body, but also just my approach to life. And overall, it could bring you any type of event actually, but it's very much about actualizing some of your long-term goals and becoming wiser about how I'm going to be kind of pushing that gas pedal. So Saturn is like the brake in the car, and an Aquarius, wants to push that gas pedal a little bit. So it's like trying to drive a car while the handbrake is on. And that could be a little bit of a challenge. Of course, Uranus is very, very much affecting your career angle as well. So it could really talk about some career changes, really. And then lastly, Pisces rising sign. Well, Saturn is triggering your 12th house at the moment. So it might be about me wanting to run away from my responsibilities, me wanting to be in the shadow somehow, especially during the retrograde period. But you might want to be remembering that in the long run, you're not going to be benefiting from that. So it's 12 house is like the traveling between different type of dimensions, and it really talks about your subconscious, and we usually call the 12th house as the self-undoing. So Saturn here definitely talks to you about looking at your subconscious fears. Maybe you're going to start feeling that your life is somehow falling apart, and I don't want to be neglecting my duties. I mean, I don't want to be neglecting my duties, but at the same time I want to, and there is that kind of battle going on uh, in that department. So it might also be an indication that you're going to be having some hospital appointments coming up, or at least you should be scheduling one. Remember that Uranus is very much triggering your third house. So, which is all about communication. So it might be telling you that it's time to talk about my inner insecurities, about my deep fears, about my psychological blockages, so that once and for all we kind of eliminate those. Yeah, so pretty much this would be a very short interpretation of what to expect from this Saturn retrograde, combined with a little bit of a Uranian flavor, because Saturn going retrograde will also meet very shortly that Uranus as well, and that's going to be our second activation, basically. So definitely you're going to have to look back at some of the things which you already did in February, and in my opinion 2020 from January onwards. So thank you very much for being here. If you like the video, press like, ring the notification bell, share the video, comment nice things, all that lovely things. And also a little bit of an announcement. I am going to be making a video on the 29th. It's going to be live, and that's going to be about the Pluto return in the US chart. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to be having you all online, and then figuring out what the Pluto return might bring for the USA. So take care of yourself and have a blessed week. Bye-bye.